Hi, this is Tim Mai. Welcome to the 1000 Deals in 30 Days Challenge. We are now on day number 16 and in module number 3 on how to structure deals. Today you're going to learn how to structure deals in a little bit more advanced than what you learned in day number 15 of just doing one closing with an assignment. Okay, today you're going to be learning about all the different types of closings that you can be doing in this 1000 Deals in 30 Days Challenge. Now, I do have a warning, and the warning is that if this confuses you, don't worry about it. Just go back and do the closing like I explained in day number 15. Okay, that's it. So this is only if you will run across situations where you need to do these other types of closings. If not, don't worry about it. Just do the day 15. If you do run across this and this still is not clear enough for you, then just post your questions in the forum so I can help you. Okay? Alright, like I said, today is a little bit more advanced, so I hope it's not going to go over some of your heads there. Okay, so there are different types of closings, different types of ways you can structure your deals. Because there are 4 different parties involved here. You have the original seller, which is the homeowner. You have the wholesaler, and then you have you as the wholesale marketer, and then you have the buyer. Okay, so just notice there's 4 different parties involved, and all 4 of those parties has to be a part of this. There has to be a principal in this transaction. Therefore, this closing gets more complicated than if you were to deal with just the seller and the buyer. All right, and so I'm gonna go through and talk real quick about the different type and then go in more detail on them. Okay, the first type of closing that you're gonna be doing, which is what I taught you in day number 15, is how to do single closing. Okay, how to do single closing with a double assignments. That's when the the wholesaler assigns his contract to you. You assign your contract to your buyer, and the seller and the buyer close together. Okay. I guess it might be helpful for me to go ahead and go further into it now. Okay. And so, first you have a contract, a standard and purchase sales agreement between the seller and the wholesaler, right? And then you have the flex option agreement between the wholesaler and you, the wholesale marketer, okay? And then you have an assignment between the wholesaler and you, and then you have another assignment between you and your buyer. So notice there's 1 contract and 2 assignments. At closing, here's what's going to happen. The seller is going to close with your end buyer, right? You and the wholesaler do not need to come to closing. The title company will pay you based on your assignment agreement here, your amount. Only the seller and the buyer has to come to closing to sign the paperwork. That means that the seller will deed the property to the buyer, and that's it. You nor the wholesaler is a part of this title chain of title. Now let me bring you back here. Next we have the double closing with assignments, meaning the seller is going to close with the wholesaler, and then you are going to assign your contract to your buyer, and the wholesaler will close again with your buyer. So there's 2 closings that happens here. All right, so first again we have the purchase and sales agreement between the seller and the wholesaler. Then we have the flex option purchase to purchase wholesale deals between the wholesaler and you. And then once you have a buyer that's interested and you're ready to exercise your option, you're going to convert your option into a standard and purchase and sales agreement. Right? The example I showed earlier up here in the single closing, you had converted your flex option into an assignment. But in this case, you're going to convert it to a standard and purchase sales agreement. The reason why you have to do this is if the wholesaler said, no, I'm not willing to assign my contract over to you because I don't want the seller to know how much money I'm making. I don't want you to know how much money I'm making. And so I want to do a new contract and double close with you, and that can happen. So if that's the case, you're going to then next assign your contract with the wholesaler here to your buyer. Okay, so here at the closing, there are two closings that's going to happen. The seller is going to close with the wholesaler, so the seller deeds the property to the wholesaler. The wholesaler is going to deed the property to your buyer. Notice you don't come into the closing, okay? You get paid as your assignment fee. The title company will, or the attorney, the closing attorney will pay you that. So there's two deeds that happens. Seller deeds to the wholesaler, wholesaler deeds to the buyer. Your name is not in the chain of title here. Only the wholesaler's name is in the chain of title here, okay? Seller, wholesaler, and buyer. Right? And then next, you have an assignment with a double closing, meaning in this case, you don't want to assign to your buyer and you want to double close it to your buyer. Perhaps it's because you are going to make a lot of money from this and you don't want your buyer to know how much money you're making because you don't want them to renegotiate your price, especially at closing. And you don't want the wholesaler to know how much money you're making either. And so you would do an assignment with a double closing. And so here's how this will work. So first, again, you have the purchase and sales agreement between the seller and the wholesaler. And then you have the flex option agreement between the wholesaler and you. And then once your buyer is interested in buying the property, once you know you have an interested buyer, you're going to then convert your flex option here into an assignment. So the wholesaler is going to assign his contract over to you. And then you're going to sign a new contract, a new agreement between you and your buyer. Okay, so here's what happens at the closing. The seller is going to close with you and deed the property to you because you close on this first contract here. And then you turn around and close with your buyer and deed the property to your buyer. And in this scenario, you are on the chain of title and the wholesaler is not on the chain of title, right? Like I said, the only reason why you would do this is because you don't want your buyers to know how much money you're making out of this deal. Okay. All right. Now, I'm not talking about REO properties here where the sellers will not, the banks, which is the seller, will not ever let you assign their contracts. In those cases, you'll always do a double closing or even a double closing if it's just the bank, you, and your buyer. Okay. All right. So next we have a triple closing, and a triple closing could be like what I just said about the banks, where let's say the wholesaler has a property under contract with a bank, and you have a property, you have a flex option with that wholesaler, okay, and it doesn't have to be a bank, by the way. It could be any property, but the wholesaler doesn't want to assign the contract to you. Wholesaler only wants to double close with you. So once you know you have an interested buyer that ready to move forward, you're going to convert your flex option. All right, you're going to exercise your option, convert it into a standard purchase and sales agreement. Okay, you're going to then write a new contract between you and the buyer. So here's what happens at the closing. The seller is going to close with the buyer, close with the wholesaler, deed the property to the wholesaler. The wholesaler is going to close with you and deed the property to you. Then you close with your buyer and you deed the property to your buyer. And I have done this on short sales before. I've actually done this with a quadruple closing on 3 short sale deals before. That was quite funny, quite interesting. But the properties there was 3 properties involved, and it had a lot of equity, because of the short sale amount was pretty cheap, and so there was a lot of parties involved. And we did a quadruple closing on that. All right, so next we have a release of equitable interest clause. And you do this release of equitable interest clause if you have a buyer that can't, that can't get an assignment or can't do a double closing. An example of that would be like a buyer that has a that's using a conventional loan. In most of these wholesale deals that you're working with, your buyer's not going to use a conventional loan. In some cases they are if the property doesn't need a lot of repairs where they can get a conventional loan. But in most cases it's not this way, okay? But if you need to, or if you have a retail deal that you want to close on, perhaps it's the deal that you're working on is not a wholesale deal, it is a retail deal, it doesn't need much repairs, and the buyer is using a conventional loan, then you do what I call a release of equitable interest clause. Sometimes I also call it a release of contract. Okay. All right. So here's the situation here, right? So let's say let me arrange this for you. So first you have the purchase and sales agreement between the seller and the wholesaler. I'm gonna just delete this out. I don't want to confuse. I want to keep things simple for you here. Between the seller and the wholesaler, and then you have for let's say for $100,000, and you have a flex option to purchase from this wholesaler for $110,000. Okay, and so that's between the wholesaler and you. And then you found a buyer, and the buyer's interested, and now you're going to convert your flex option into a standard purchase sales agreement between the wholesaler and you. And then you're going to do a new contract between you and your buyer for $120,000. Okay? And here's the tricky part. In order for you to do a single closing, you need to go back to the seller and explain to the seller that that because your buyer is using conventional loan, you're not able to do two closings like the way you normally do your business, and so the seller's still gonna get the price that they want, which is $100,000, but we have to redo the contracts for $120,000, and with the buyer. And I don't want to go into too much details here of how the different ways you can explain this to them, but just know that this is how it works. Maybe in another video I explain all the ways to negotiate with sellers and get them to agree to that. But by this point, most sellers will agree to this because they just wanted their 100 grand, right? They don't really care how much money you're making. They just want to close because they want to get the property closed as soon as possible. Okay, and so so at closing, here's what's going to happen. The seller's going to close with the end buyer, and you're going to invoice the seller for a release of equitable interest or lease of contract for $20,000, and you're going to submit that invoice to the title company, and then the title company will pay you your $10,000 and pay your wholesaler the $10,000. Okay, so just know that that exists. If that confuse you, I don't have much more time to get into that in this video. I'll help you that in a forum or in another video. Okay, and the invoice is also available in the members area of dodeals.com for you to get access to. All right, so here's your homework for today. Your homework for today is number one, continue to market your property for sale. All right, your deal for sale, or your home for sale, and practice filling out the contracts. Right, by now you should have seen the video I did on how to fill out the contract, and so practice filling that out. Okay, so that way you get familiar with that. And the Module 2 contest rule ends today. So today is your last day to report your status, your progress. How many flex option have you gotten? Whoever has the most deals or the most flex options signed will get a free cash buyers list from us, where you can then sell your properties to these buyers. Okay, so check the forum for the contest rules and submit your progress there. Use the forum to ask any questions. So to get access to the forum, go to 1000dealsin30days.com and click on member access and log in. You'll be able to see it. So with that, I want to thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to teaching you more in the next training video. Bye bye for now.